Guys, today we're gonna test two budget-friendly graphics cards. On the one hand, the super budget-friendly AMD RX6600 from Gigabyte. That's a very affordable entry-level card, a little bit older generation. Maybe you can snap that up for a bargain. And on the other hand, I have an NVIDIA GeForce RTX4060 here in the Asus ROX Strix edition. Very, very nice card. I really love this card for the RGB effects and the nice design and the big cooling element. But if you cannot get a Strix version, totally fine. You can get any RTX 4060 and it should give you pretty comparable results. And how am I going to test these cards? Guys, I'm going to do a lot of benchmarks. I'm going to show this to you in a second. But as you can see here, the generational difference, the one card is a little bit older, the other one is newer. And I'm going to put these into an AM4 system. Guys, a lot of people, they still use AM4 platform, which is still a pretty good platform. I'm using it with an AMD Ryzen 5600X, since that should be plenty sufficient for both cards. And why don't we have a look at the benchmarks results? First, in 1080p, the AMD 6600 versus the RTX 4060 from NVIDIA. And you can see there is a pretty significant difference. And where the NVIDIA cards really excel is the ray tracing, in my opinion. I love the ray tracing. It gives you a much better atmosphere in the games if the games are optimized for ray tracing, which in the case of Cyberpunk it is. And stepping it up one resolution, which is not what the cards are marketed for. They're more marketed for the 1080p, but you can also use them for WQHD, the 1040p resolution, which that's what I like to use them for. And as you can see, well, the NVIDIA card, you can even use them in a higher resolution with still having average 66 frames and ray tracing low. With the RX 6600, which is a little bit of an older generation from AMD, I think I would not go higher than 1044p high setting. And to see exactly now, okay, what happens with GPU and CPU utilization, let's quickly start the Cyberpunk benchmark. As you can see, I put that setting on the high preset and we are running the RX 6600. And as you can see, the graphics card utilization is very high, almost 100%. And the CPU utilization is actually quite low. So that's why I would say in this particular case, what I'm testing here, you don't have a GPU bottleneck, but you rather not a CPU bottleneck, but you rather have more of a GPU bottleneck. As you can see, the Ryzen processor doesn't have to do very much at all. So that would be, yeah, it would be absolutely okay pairing. If you are happy with the little bit lower graphics performance that the older RX 6600 can deliver. It's a very power efficient system as far as I can tell. I really like this Ryzen CPU. But graphics card wise, if we now jump to the NVIDIA RTX 4060, you can bump up the settings significantly. In that case, I really like the ray tracing low. And guys, don't be fooled just because it's called ray tracing low. Ray tracing low looks pretty good. You don't always have to have the ray tracing ultra. And now we're gonna do it exactly the same thing. And again, we're gonna keep a close eye on the graphics card utilization as well as the CPU utilization. Because if the CPU utilization should be too high, there sometimes could be dips in the graphics card utilization, but here, as you can see, it's a pretty good pairing. The CPU is utilized, but not overly, and most importantly, the graphics card utilization remains, yeah, almost at 100%. That's where you want to be. If I would do the same test with the same system and the same CPU, and I put in an RTX 4070 or even an RTX 4080, I know, especially with RTX 4080, the graphics card utilization would drop maybe to 60% or maybe even 50%. So using a bigger graphics card would give you a CPU bottleneck, but here it's perfectly matched. At least that's are my test results so far. Now guys, please also consider your chipset, CPU, and in some cases even your power supply, especially if you would get a 4070 or 4080. It's very nice to have a power supply with the 16-pin power connector. In the case of the graphics cards that I've shown you right now, you don't need that. You still have the the old connector. So that it's not as relevant, but what's definitely relevant, for example, if you have the RTX4060 is that it's a PCIe 4.0 card. So you want also have a PCIe 4.0 board and CPU. Please make sure you have PCIe 4 if you want to have the RTX4060, since it's an 8-lane card. So that's something that some people might overlook. You have this 8-lane card, which I have shown you. It's an 8-lane card. So you can imagine that you may have not a CPU bottleneck, not a GPU bottleneck, but you may have a PCIe bottleneck if you would take this RTX 4060 that has only 8 lanes, PCIe 4.0, and you put it into an older board, let's say a A520 board with a CPU that only has PCIe 3.0, then you would severely limit the bandwidth, because you cut that bandwidth in half by stepping it down to PCIe 3.0, and then you cut it in half by only having 8 lanes. So that's a little bit of a danger there that you can easily avoid by looking and making sure you have PCIe 4.0. What's my conclusion? Which card would I buy? Which card would I not buy? Guys, I would not get the AMD RX6600. I think it's a little bit too old of a card. Especially if you have a newer system or you're building a new system. I think it's just not powerful enough. But I'm very happy with the NVIDIA GeForce RTX4060. That's a card that does everything I want. It performs very nicely in a variety of games. I've tested it in a variety of games, and I really like the power efficiency of that card. And I really like what I really like about the NVIDIA card is the ray tracing. I love the ray tracing. Even if it just says ray tracing low in Cyberpunk, it really looks very appealing to the eye. Much better than when the ray tracing is turned off. But as a disclaimer, not all games are super nicely optimized for ray tracing. So even if you have a powerful NVIDIA card, maybe even RTX 4070, I have also had some games where the ray tracing didn't perform as I would have hoped. But that's not something I think NVIDIA can control. That's more a thing of the game developers as well. Maybe we see some updates there, but with Cyberpunk, I really love this card. Guys, I would get the RTX 4060. Let me know what other graphics cards you want to see. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.